All right, Utah Jazz fans, we are back. Built by Sports. We're going to talk about the Jazz today and all the craziness that has been happening in the off season. Been wanting to make a video for a while now with all the craziness going on, but COVID has had other plans for me. But we're back and we're ready to talk about the Jazz. We're going to talk about the trade rumors going around the draft for the Utah Jazz, as the draft is tomorrow night. And we're going to talk about that rebrand with the new color scheme. We're going to talk about coaches and possible Rudy versus Donovan builds. So be right with you after this 30-second buzzer. All right, we're here, and we are joined by Derek and Zach. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing good.
Doing great. Ray talks Jazz.
Sweet. So we got a lot of things to talk about with the Jazz. We're going to start off with the draft tomorrow night. It's going to be a big night for the NBA. Maybe a huge night for the Jazz and the future of the Utah Jazz. Let's start talking about the trade rumors and trade possibilities of the Utah Jazz. Obviously, we know the Jazz don't have a pick currently in this year's draft, but there are birds saying that the Jazz are looking to get in and they want a piece of the pie. So, what do you guys think? What should the Jazz do to get into the draft? Let's start with Derek.
Yeah, like you said, there's been a lot of rumors that Danny Ainge is aggressively calling around trying to get into the late first round, if not up to the early lot or the late lottery, up to 10, roughly around there. Yeah, I think, obviously everybody's available for trade on the Jazz. We've heard every name pop up in a lot of trade rumors. And so I think they have the assets to do it if they want to, just depending on what the asking price is. And a lot of the pieces that the Jazz have are pieces that will definitely help another team. It's just the combination of players that the Jazz have on this team right now are not working well together. But like individual players like Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson, Royce O'Neal, and especially Rudy Gobert, he's like, star level player. If you plug them into different systems around the league, they could help another team get to the next level. So I definitely think they have the assets to get back into the draft. It just depends on the team and the situation.
Who do you want the Jazz to trade most?
I don't know that there's much validity to this one. Are you saying as far as getting it back into the draft?
Which asset from the Jazz do you want the Jazz to trade away?
I think it's important that we get Mike Conley to a new destination. I love Mike Conley. When we traded for him, I was excited. I thought we gave away a lot, honestly, when we first traded for him. But, with all the other pieces that we got, I was excited where it was going to go. It's just where the league has gone since then with all that length. When we run into, he just is neutralized every time we get into the playoffs. He's so small, and he's lost a step athletically. And so I think Mike Conley might be able to help another team if that team that he goes to has enough wings on the team to kind of offset how small he is. It's just on our team, he's paired next to Donovan Mitchell, which is just too much, 6'1" on the court. So, yeah, I think if we do trade Mike Conley, there were some rumored trades out there that the Washington Wizards are looking to add a veteran point guard. I don't think they have Mike Conley in their sights, but if we get closer and closer to the draft and all their other options that they're looking at, I think they're honestly looking at guys like Malcolm Brogdon and some others. But if those don't come to fruition and dry up, maybe the Jazz can sneak in there and offer Mike Conley. And what I would want in return for that is somebody like Contavious Caldwell-Pope on the Wizards. And he's, 6'5". On that year that the Lakers won the championship in the bubble, he was like their premier wing defender. He shoots
Yeah.
roughly 40% from three. And I think that's the type of guard you want next to Donovan Mitchell. He's not a star by any means, but he's solid. And once you get to playoff time, he's not going to be taken advantage of on the defensive end. And I think that's realistic if we go for the number 10 overall pick and maybe Caldwell Pope, and then they can try to convince Bradley Beal to come back to maybe run it back for what the Wizards are trying to achieve. So
Yeah, I agree with you. I think just trading Conley in that and getting Caldwell Pope back, I think it's addition by subtraction, not even regarding Caldwell Pope in that factor. So addition by subtraction, just getting Conley out of there, and then we get Caldwell Pope on top of it. I think it's a good deal for the Jazz. Zach, going into tomorrow night, what do you see the Jazz doing?
Yeah, I think I'm on the same level as Derek as far as who to trade first. And my first option was Mike Conley, but another one would be Royce O'Neal. I think he's a really good piece for a lot of teams that need defense and can shoot the three well and can be a good piece for other teams. There's a couple teams that are looking for a player like Royce O'Neal, like the Chicago Bulls. Their defensive numbers were better than what I think they really are. I think some of the players were really excited on the Chicago Bulls and stepped it up, but I think defensively they're really not all that talented. So I think a trade with the Chicago Bulls to get some pieces with them and whatnot through Royce O'Neal is a good option also.
Yeah. No, I've been saying since the beginning of this offseason that Mike Conley needs to go, and Royce O'Neal is not a starter on a championship team. And so either get a starting power forward that can start over him, or whether that's through trading him, or have him come off the bench. And I think what you guys talked about, having either Mike Conley or O'Neal go, is probably the best options for the Jazz right now.
I also think Royce lost his dog in him a little bit. He's not as scrappy as he used to be. He's still a great defender, but he's not hustling as much as I feel like he used to. I'm wondering if that's partly because he feels like he needs to be more of the offense at times.
I think it's because he got that money.
Yeah, it kind of started once he got that money, it feels like. So it could be multiple factors, but
I think it was eye-popping, and this shouldn't happen. Like when you watch that Celtics team and when it was getting to the upper echelons of those, finals in the East and West, how athletic those teams were. But yeah, it was eye-popping when we simply put Daniel House on the court for the Utah Jazz and how much more athletic he was than any other player we had on the court. And that made me really realize that we're paying this Daniel House like 1.7 million, and he's like the eighth guy off our bench or ninth guy off our bench. That shows how much we need some more length and athleticism, because he was really putting other people to shame as far as hustling and athleticism. So, and he's like 29, he's a little older as well. So yeah, even if it's not a trade for Royce O'Neal, but it's getting Royce O'Neal back to more of a natural position for him, because the Jazz go so small with Conley 6'1", Donovan 6'1", Royce at 6'4", and a lot of times in our lineups, he actually plays the power forward position. But if it's simply to trade Conley for somebody who's more of a 3 or 4, and it moves Royce back to the 2 spot, then our team, as a whole, is just getting more longer and more athletic. But I agree.
I think that kind of goes. Sorry, I think that kind of goes with what we've been talking about recently about Rudy Gobert. A lot of people around the league, even some fans, will just talk about Rudy Gobert like it's his fault that the Jazz haven't been successful. But like you just said, Derek, we have two 6'1" guards and Royce O'Neal at power forward, and then we have Bogdanovich, who's a subpar defender at best, and that's who's around Rudy Gobert. We're really gonna blame Rudy Gobert for not guarding all 5 players on the court. Like, the Jazz need to change it up and give Rudy some help. If they're planning on keeping him, of course, we'll talk about that. But
Mhm.
it's definitely short-sighted of people, I think, to say that Rudy Gobert is not the excellent player that he really is. So
I think Rudy Gobert's, being the scapegoat. I would love, as a Jazz fan, to see Rudy stay if we could get additional defensive wings around him. And I told Parker this, I think, the other day, but honestly, if it was any other big in Rudy's position on this Jazz team, so just for 1 second, imagine if he switched out Anthony Davis with Rudy Gobert or Giannis Antetokounmpo with Rudy Gobert on this Jazz team, and we went to the playoffs, and Giannis Antetokounmpo is playing with Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley, a 6'4" Royce O'Neal, and Bogdanovich, and we finish the series in 6 games. We get beat. I don't think anybody would be saying Giannis Antetokounmpo is a crappy defender and that's why they can't defend. I bet you everybody would be saying Giannis Antetokounmpo needs more help. That's what they would be saying. But in turn, in the case of Rudy Gobert, they say, "Oh, Rudy Gobert's overrated." I'm like, are you seeing who's on the court with him? Like, it's a bunch of scrubs on defense, and yeah, he's being thrown under the bus quite hard, which I don't think, if, like, we'll talk about Rudy a little bit later, but yeah, it's kind of unfortunate because it's definitely not his fault.
Zach, would you trade who so okay, let's get back to the draft. If we're trading into the draft, Zach, where do you think the Jazz are trying to get to? There's rumors that Danny Ainge has a certain player in mind. Obviously, we don't know where that player is going to be. But where do you think the Jazz are going to try to get into? What position?
I think they could almost get anywhere with how many trade assets we have. It just depends on what we're willing to give up and trade for. Like, if we wanted to be top 5, even, I mean, we have Gobert and Mitchell that we could easily, trade up into that area. But if we wanted to be down in the lower 20s and 30s, I think the Royce O'Neal trade is probably is what's going to be around those areas. So I would say I think around 2025 is what I'm hoping personally, that we could possibly get into. I know that's not shooting, it's not a high standard or anything. It's not reaching, but I think it's doable for sure, to get into that range and get some assets, get some role players on this team.
Yeah, I think it's important that the Jazz get some young players in. So I don't think it's a loss to say, even if it's in the 20s, but hopefully in the teens, I would say would be exciting for the future. But even if it's in the 20s, then at least we have some sort of future aspect to the Jazz right now, because right now it's kind of looking grim for the future. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I think we need some youth on this team. We need some rejuvenation. Like, obviously with the new coach coming, that'll change some stuff up as well. But we've been in win now mode for the last 3-4 years. That first year we made that trade for Mike Conley, it was win now mode, and it's almost like, I think the Jazz used to develop players really well. They had really young coaches helping people develop, and then as soon as we made that trade, it was kind of win now mode. We were trading all our first round picks away to try to get players that can contribute now. But if we can get somewhere in this first round to get, Danny Ainge is known for pulling rabbits out of a hat in the mid-teens to late 20s and whatnot, and finding players that can contribute. So we need that, especially if we trade Gobert, even if for some picks and some assets and whatnot. That's kind of the direction we're going. It might be a couple-year rebuild to try to get a contender around Donovan, but it starts with starting to draft those players. So
I
think
think to
that's
get a straight across trade in some sort to get down to the teens, Bogdanovich is a good option too. I personally like Bogdanovich a lot. I don't want to see him go at all, but he would be a good piece to try to get down into the lower teens.
yeah,
no, I
one
agree with what you're saying though, there, because I got this graphic prepared for today just in case, but this is the West next year. Like you talking about preparing for the next 3 years, like to get back in 3 years, probably a very good idea because we got Suns, Warriors, Grizzlies, Mavs, Jazz, Nuggets, T Wolves, Pelicans, Clippers, Lakers, Blazers. That's just next year, all of them fighting to get into the playoffs. There's only 8 spots. I believe that's I didn't count, but it says 1 misses the play-in and 2 miss the playoffs. So 3 of those teams aren't making the playoffs next year.
yeah, it's going to be a madhouse. One thing that I think Danny Ainge brings to the Jazz, though, as far as the draft, like he's rarely missed. If you guys listen to Locked On Jazz, David Locke did a whole breakdown of Danny Ainge's record in drafting. He rarely misses in the draft, which is encouraging. He rarely misses, but he also doesn't let assets what do you call it, expire. He doesn't let them go for nothing. And that's one thing that the Jazz have not been good at in the past. It was ran nothing, the Millers are an amazing family, but it was almost ran like a family friendly business where we just love Andre Karolinko so much and we wish him well. And it was almost like a handshake and goodbye. They did that with Andre Karolinko. They did that with Millsap, with Al Jefferson, with so many assets during the
Wesley
years where
Matthews.
Wes Matthews, where we needed to trade them for picks in return so we can do things. And they just almost as if it was like betrayal if we trade them when everybody else in the league does. And Danny Ainge is stone cold. He's traded Garnett and Paul Pierce and statues for the
He
Celtics.
traded
And
their coach,
yeah, he
their
traded
championship
Doc
winning
Rivers.
coach.
Yeah. So, yeah, like Zach was saying, I love Bogdanovich, but he's an expiring contract and he's turning 34 this year. We got to get a first round pick out of him for the future of the Jazz. We got to make those tough decisions, and unfortunately, it's leaning towards trading a pillar like Rudy, who's one of the stars that we've had on this team that loves being here and wants to be here. And that's one of the tough pills we have to swallow. But he's also going to get one of the largest returns as far as a player we have and an asset. So,
All right. So, just as a last note on the Kings, I just want to. Sorry, not the Kings. I'm going to say something about the Kings, but
different
on the
podcast.
Jazz and draft night tomorrow night, I think there's 3 main targets in my mind that I would love to see the Jazz get. And obviously, it's the Hawks at 16. That's already a rumor or it's pretty substantial actually, that it's been talked about between the Hawks and the Jazz. Um, I'd love to see 16. I think there's a lot of players that are still exciting at 16. There's the Wizards at 10. The Wizards have openly said that the 10 spot is open. I would even maybe be willing to give Bogdanovich for 10 because there is legit future potential at 10, maybe even stars, this year for sure. And then finally, the top 5, the most likely given pick to be given away is the Sacramento Kings. And I have seen a lot of packages out there with including the Jazz with them possibly getting that 4th pick. And this one was one I saw today. It's just Harrison Barnes, Rashawn Holmes, round 1, number 4 pick from the Kings, and they get Rudy Gobert. And you're asking why would they do that? I think that gets Sacramento Kings into the playoffs instantly, and I think that's their goal. If you think Harrison Barnes is a starter and Rashawn Holmes is a starter, yeah, they're a starter on a non-playoff team. Like, I think people who have been denying this trade aren't really understanding the impact Rudy brings instantly to a team, and I think he puts them straight into the playoffs with Fox and Sabonis. They're going to the playoffs with Rudy there. So I think that's possible. I think maybe we'd have to throw an O'Neal in there to make that happen. But I really would love to see the Jazz get into the draft because I really like summer league and I want to see some young guys play. So, anything else on the draft for tomorrow?
Well, I'll piggyback on that Sacramento trade that you just pulled up. I like the idea of that because I do think that Sacramento, they haven't made very wise choices, in the last, trading Halliburton for Sabonis. Like, I can see where they were going with it. They just wanted to speed up their process because, Fox is getting into those, mid-20s and whatnot. Anyways, now I think they feel the pressure because the whole league was like, that was a dumb trade and you traded away quite a good young player. But, they might be able to redeem themselves a little bit if they show they had a little bit of vision saying, no, we got Sabonis, now we got Gobert, and now we're headed to the playoffs. And at the ages all those players are, they could be a pretty strong playoff team. I'm not saying championship level, but it's a pretty strong playoff team for the next 4 or 5 years. So yeah, I think that's a good vision for them, and I think Sacramento's also proven they're not great at drafting and developing, and if they want to use that asset to get a known commodity like Gobert, it's probably in their best interest as well. So
that's a very good point. Why would Sacramento continue to pick players so they can ruin them?
Yeah, right.
When they have a proven guy in Rudy Gobert they could get. I think that's a great point.
With that Sacramento thing as well, like obviously those Rashawn Holmes, he might be a hustle, power forward center. With that team that the Jazz has left over, I really do think that would lead to the Jazz mid-season trading, Bogdanovich for first-round picks, trading Harrison Barnes to a contender because everybody's going to be focusing in on Harrison Barnes and Bogdanovich and players like that we still have on our roster. The Jazz could also get like not only the number 4 pick, future picks, and whatnot, but with the other pieces on our team, get a whole bunch of first-round picks and almost do a mini one-year turnaround like they did with the Blazers and Damian Lillard, and do a one-year quick gathering a bunch of assets, turn around, rebuild this team around Donovan, and hope for the best.
Well, it would be around Donovan and that number 4 pick, who would be Jaden Ivey, who's a taller. I hate comparisons sometimes in the draft, but it's close. He'd be a taller John Morant, super athletic, super competitive. He could be a point guard. He could be a shooting guard. I think we would put him at point guard with Donovan because Donovan's more natural at shooting guards. So I think building around those two would be very exciting for the Jazz. I think it'd be exciting for Donovan, which is huge because we need him to be excited. And I think you're kind of right. We need to get rid of the older assets like Bogdanovich to build a younger core around those two. But yeah. So we'll move on. Move on. This week, Utah Jazz, as anticipated for about a year now, have come out officially with their rebrand and their new jerseys for the next season. There has been a lot of turmoil, you could say, over these jerseys. I'll just get right into it. Zach, what do you think about the new jerseys?
So I do like the simplicity of them, the black and gold. I think they kind of stand out, pop out, and I mean, I think they kind of look cool. I don't know. I do like them, and I do like the fact that the Jazz picked the color. We've been many colors. We've almost been every color of the rainbow, since being a Jazz fan. And there's been lots of different jerseys. We've been green. We've been blue. We've been a lot of random colors, red. And so I think the fact that they picked a color, I could go buy a purple jersey and now it'll last. And I could wear it to any Jazz game for the rest of my life. So I do like the way they picked a color. And even if it's just like the old retro mountains, it's a good look. I like it. That screams Jazz. and John Stockton and Karl Malone, and it has good history to it. So at first I thought that's all it was going to be, but I hear that they're bringing out more purple jerseys, more modern. Yeah, that one right there. So
Yeah, I like that one.
I like it.
And this one too. I have some qualms about this one, but I'll let you go. Keep going. Is
Yeah,
that
I
so?
think
The yellow and the black. Do you agree with that decision?
yeah. Oh yeah, I definitely agree with it. The only one that I am not the biggest fan of is the white one.
You
But
and I must be the same.
yeah, I mean, it's just the Jazz logo and a number right under it. I don't know. It doesn't make too much sense to me. It doesn't really pop. It kind of looks like it's a Junior Jazz kind of jersey.
Yes,
So
true. I think that you're right. I think the white one is the most uninspiring one for me too, and the yellow one's getting a lot of hate because it's highlighter marker yellow. They say, but I think the picture that they're sending around is kind of deceiving because it doesn't look quite like this soft velvety jersey that we're seeing here, because this is the one being sent around to everybody. The one that Jordan Clarkson was wearing in the video is different. It has different texture to it. It has different lines to it, and it looks not as highlighter yellow. It looks kind of like a different yellow. So I think it's interesting that that's being sent around. I don't know where that's coming from, if that's official or not, but I think on the court, that court that they showed with the black and the yellow court, it's beautiful. I think the jerseys on that court are going to look great. And I think some fans are kind of not seeing the whole picture here. Like you said, Zach, this is a rebrand, and it's different from any other rebrand. This is like the Jazz finally saying, "This is us. These are the colors that we're going with, and we're not changing much from here." And eventually, Jazz fans everywhere will know this is our colors. They may hate it now, but eventually they're gonna look back with fondness at these colors. So, what do you think, Derek?
Yeah, I agree. I like the black and yellow concept. As far as the additional swag that's come out, as you know, because they've created a bunch of hoodies and hats and whatnot with
Mm-hmm.
these new colors. I love that. For the longest time, I actually just didn't buy Jazz hats because I buy lots of different hats. I always wear hats, but I hardly ever bought Jazz hats just because they were always corny looking, honestly. Like, and
Yeah,
we're like,
that's true.
and we are lifelong Jazz fans, and a lot of them are just really corny. The ones that came out last year with the City Edition, with the reds and stuff, those were the best Jazz hats I've seen.
Yeah,
Um,
true.
but the ones I've seen that are black and yellow, I love them. I think they're sweet. I do, and as far as the jerseys go, I don't mind them at all. I think they're just fine. I think a lot of people are overreacting. I thought they looked even better when Jordan Clarkson put them on. Um, and it makes sense. Like, honestly, when you think of Utah, what's our colors? Like I said, those City Edition jerseys were awesome because we're known for Moab and Red Rock and things like that, and it kind of matched Southern Utah and what we're known for, like the great outdoors. But it doesn't represent all of Utah. But what Utah is we're known as the Beehive State, and yellow and black, beehive. And like I think that those colors actually represent Utah. So
Yeah,
yeah, I love it. I do think that those colors represent Utah. The Mardi Gras colors should have never followed the Utah Jazz to Utah when we purchased the organization. But the story is that when the Utah Jazz first purchased the organization and brought them, they didn't have enough money to rebrand, and they didn't have enough money to buy a new court. So they just kept the colors, they
oh
kept the
man,
name, they kept everything, and they brought it to Utah. But yeah, Ryan Smith, I like his vision to rebrand. I think a lot of people are unnecessarily overreacting, and I like the mountain jersey as well. Those are some iconic memories with those mountain jerseys. So yeah, I'm all on board for this, and yeah, give me more. Let's go.
I
okay,
I think, like you said about the beehives, I think the white is more since the state bird is seagulls, so I think they were going for the seagull look, white jerseys.
That's where they made the mistake. They should have stopped
They
at the
are they
bees.
they are a trash bird. So
Yeah, it's true.
um,
Trash jersey too. So
yeah.
And the Jazz played like trash in the playoffs. So there we go.
there are some rumors going on, and they might be purely rumors, but the Jazz totally rebranding and going to more of a Utah-based name as well. And that's a slow process that they'll roll out over a year or two. So I almost do wonder with the yellow and black colors if it'll be a more Utah-based name. Like there used to be a minor league baseball team here in Utah called the Buzz. There's currently one called the Bees, and
Sting,
the Sting. There could be
Hive.
yeah, I love that. Actually, there's a jump on it place, a trampoline place in Spanish Fork, Utah, that it's called the Hive. And as I drove by that, there's a logo of a bee and the Hive. I'm like, that's kind of a sweet name. I wouldn't mind that at all. But you know, if they keep the Jazz, so be it. It's almost the same concept as the Lakers. They belong to Minnesota. They moved to LA. The name Lakers doesn't make sense in LA, but it's been there so long, nobody really thinks twice about it. So if they keep the Jazz, so be it. But I would also be up for a rename as well. It fits the state a little bit better. So
So here's my three main qualms with this whole situation of the rebrand. I think that the new colors are good, but the jerseys themselves, specifically the yellow and black jerseys, are not a home run for me. I feel like they could have done better being more designy, designer type jerseys. They're just like, hey, our colors are yellow and black, and we have yellow and black jerseys. It's pretty robotic to me. So I get some of the backlash there. I don't think the colors are bad themselves, though. Some fans are like, why are they adding yellow to our colors? Why can't we just be purple? And I want to show just this one. Yellow has always been a color for the Utah Jazz, and there's so many people saying, why did they add yellow to the colors for the Utah Jazz? I'm like, yellow's always been here. And honestly, the old yellow jerseys, where they're all yellow, are worse than these yellow jerseys. If you put them next to each other, the old ones are just bland and they're bad. So I agree with you guys when you're saying we never used to buy Jazz stuff because it was just boring or embarrassing. It was kind of confusing for us all. So
I
second,
also think the whiny fans are always the loudest as well. Like I
oh
don't,
yeah,
you know,
that's how
I've
Twitter
talked to
works,
quite a
isn't it?
few people at work that, you go online, all you hear is the complaints. I talked to quite a few people at work that are saying, "Oh yeah, that's pretty sweet." So I do think online the whiny people are drowning out everybody else. There was an awesome fan on one of the Jazz Facebook pages that did an awesome comparison to where he's just basically saying everybody's complaining that they're too simple and too basic, but he had the Jazz jersey posted with Golden State's jersey, the Brooklyn Nets jersey, the Celtics jersey, and there's like six other teams' jerseys that were next to it that are essentially the same. Like a lot of teams have gone very just clean and basic, and that's what the Brooklyn Nets are. That's what the Celtics are, and he's kind of like,
Exactly.
you know, we're just emphasizing that these are our colors, and obviously any team makes little additions as it goes on. Like next year they'll probably have some stripes that are within the color scheme on the pants, and they'll
Yeah.
make little adjustments. So
And honestly, I feel like I'm not a genius. I feel like I'm not very, exceptionally bright. But when I first saw these jerseys, I instantly thought of those other teams and their simplistic, new, modern look, and I understood that that's what we're going for. At the beginning, I didn't have any issue with how the numbers looked and the lettering looked on this because I knew it was modern. But so many people are like, "Why are the numbers so big? Look at Oregon. Look at the Oregon Ducks right now. Their numbers are like the entire jersey right now." So yeah, I can't stand the talk right now. It's ridiculous. But
yeah.
the last thing I want to say about the jerseys is, um, I think the biggest issue, honestly, that people, not a lot of people have talked about these jerseys is that we've got our rebrand with the mountains, the purple mountains, and the Beehive State yellow and black. The biggest thing that does not fit in reality is the name Jazz.
Mm-hmm.
It's so out of place in our new this is Utah rebrand, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's time, honestly, to talk about giving back the name Jazz to the New Orleans, and they may not even use it, but just say like we're gonna become our own team. We're not gonna
Mm-hmm.
be the confusing Mardi Gras in Utah. That's
Mm-hmm.
never been a thing. It's not part of anybody's history. So
It did
I
bring a
think
lot of
it's time.
culture to Utah, though, because Utah has, I think, the third largest jazz festival in the nation. So it gave it gave us some culture by bringing that over here. So that's good. But
That's one way to take note.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
take note. No, I would be for one excited. A lot of obviously we're gonna have a lot of fans if that name change happens. A lot of fans are gonna come out hating that too. But
Yeah.
I for one would be excited to see what we come up with there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move on to the coaching prospects coming up for the Utah Jazz. Obviously, we're losing All-Star coach Quinn Snyder. It's heartbreaking, but maybe necessary because there's been kind of a staleness going on in Utah with this team, and maybe we need a new voice. So, um, Derek, what are you seeing out there? What coach do you want the Jazz to pick up?
Um, I'll just speak on the ones that we're familiar with because Johnny Bryant was an assistant here for a long time and left last year to go be the lead assistant in New York with the Knicks. Then Alex Jensen is currently the lead assistant under Quinn Snyder, and they've appointed him to take over all summer operations for Summer League and all this other stuff. And he's kind of the man in charge until they assign a new person. Um, and then Terry Stott, we know him. He's been in the league a long time. I really did think it depends on where we're going to go before the draft because there's so many dynamics. So Alex Jensen, when Rudy Gobert was first drafted, he was a developmental coach with the Jazz. He was further down the coaching line under Quinn Snyder. He was assigned to Rudy Gobert. And he, ever since Rudy's been drafted, he's been his assigned coach for summer league, off-season stuff, and all this other, development type stuff. They're really tight. And same thing with Johnny Bryant. When Johnny Bryant was with the Jazz, he was Donovan Mitchell's assignment. He was his assigned coach. And so I almost wonder if we're going to see, I don't know that they choose Alex Jensen and then trade away Rudy, who's his man. And, it makes more sense that if Johnny Bryant's the coach that's decided the rebuilding around Donovan Mitchell, if they select Alex Jensen, I think they might keep Rudy, and try to see what he can do with this roster. He did get a small little run when Quinn Snyder was out with COVID. He coached a couple games in a row, and I believe we won those games. And it was exciting because, like, he switched up the rotation ever so slightly. Like Quinn Snyder's rotation was so regimented, and when he was there, he just kind of made coaching and substitutions based on the flow of the game, and inserted Pascal because we needed his energy at that time, and Pascal played a longer stint, and you could feel that it was a little bit different. So as far as I go, if we're keeping Rudy, I would like to see what Alex Jensen can do. If we are trading Rudy, I think just to try to appease Donovan and whatnot, and I think he's perfectly capable, then Johnny Bryant is great. And I don't think you can go wrong with a guy like Terry Stott. I think with his defense, the way he was able to squeeze out decent defensive teams in Portland with CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard and Nurkic, if we were to keep this team together but trade little pieces like Conley and fringe guys to get more wing defenders around Rudy and Donovan, I would like to see what Terry Stott could do with this team as well. But in my mind, those would be my top three coaches that are still on the board.
So Alex Jensen, Johnny Bryant, and Terry Stotts. Okay.
Terry Stott. Yep.
Yeah. My number one was Terry Stotts. Also, I like the way he coaching at the Trailblazers. He's a great coach. I think he got a lot out of Nurkic, and he I think he's a great coach. I think he has a lot in common with Quinn Snyder, but like we've already said, that we just need a change of scenery, change of coaching. Other than Terry Stotts, I do like Alex Jensen. I think he has a good grip on the team. He already knows the team, and it's just the easiest transition, I feel like, out of all of them. Not saying that easy is best, but one other thing I would say too is whatever coach they end up getting, I do hope that this coach brings back some fire. It feels like this last year, the fire was out. Like whenever the Jazz were doing good, playing really well in the playoffs, the Jazz bench was sitting on the bench still and not celebrating. There's no hype. There's a little times that Pascal would come on the court and get everybody fired up, but other than that, it was just really mellow. And I don't think we can win that way. I don't think any team can really win that way. And you would just see these other teams like the Mavericks, the ones who we lost to in the playoffs. They were going crazy after every time they scored, and like they were hyped. The Jazz just seemed dead off the bench. So whatever coach does come in, I definitely hope there's a change as far as the energy in the room.
Yeah, I agree. I think, something you said, I mean, that thing you were saying about the Jazz and their bench, it kind of makes me start to wonder, maybe it's the leadership of the players. Maybe the dichotomy between Rudy Gobert maybe being the leader and Donovan Mitchell maybe being the leader is kind of worn thin. That type of house divided cannot stand type of deal. Maybe it is time that we just okay, we got to go with one, because both of them are kind of pulling the team apart, and it's confusing in the locker room. Maybe it's not the coach's fault, but yeah, I agree. I think we need a coach that can come in and bring some fire. And quickly, I'll just say that I personally really am excited about the prospect of Johnny Bryant. I think he's my number one choice. I think not only because Donovan likes him, I think it's because he's young and he's going to have that fire for sure. He's going to come in, have that fire. Anyone he's worked with when he was an assistant in Utah improved and loved him. So I think he's a very likable guy. He's going to bring a new vision to the team and a youthful vision to the team too. And in that same breath, I like Will Hardy from the Celtics. Obviously, he's young, and that's the biggest gripe most people have against him. But he was an assistant coach for the team that was in the playoffs. I'm sorry, in the championship series this year. I think he's learned a lot from that experience of going through the playoffs with this team and being in the finals at the highest level. And people are saying that he's mostly an offensive-minded guy, but the Celtics were the best defense in the league. So I'm interested to see if he is just a genius offensive mind, but knows what it takes to be the best defense in the league. I'd be really interested to see what he can do with the Jazz and how he would help build our team here. So I think Johnny Bryant and Will Hardy are my two favorites.
With Hardy, he also comes from the Posh tree.
True.
So there's that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I was just listening to a little bit of stuff on him, on his background, and yeah, he comes from Popovich. Obviously, he was around the organization when Danny Ainge was there under Brad Stevens, and then this past year under the, as the lead assistant for the Celtics. So yeah, he's been around great coaches. And then Johnny Bryant as well, coaching under Quinn for so many years. And people forget, not Donovan Mitchell, Gordon Hayward, when he first came to the Jazz, like he was a willowy, skinny guy. And he was Johnny Bryant was assigned to Donovan Mitchell. That was his workout buddy, and it was his trainer. And he was the one that I remember hearing stories where he would say, like, what time do you, because Gordon Hayward was a really hard worker. He's like, what time do you want to be here? And Gordon would be like, I want to get to the gym at 4:30. He's like, okay, I'll meet you there. And he like would put in the time. He would meet Gordon Hayward every day. He was at the gym, do whatever it took to just be there for him and help him develop. And those kind of stories are awesome. He was like, he's a grinder from the very time he got a position on the Jazz all the way up to the lead assistant for the Knicks. Like, I just think he's got the work ethic to definitely, take it on. So I think there's some awesome candidates, in those top 4 that we've been discussing. So
Yeah, I think the Jazz almost like can't go wrong, honestly. Obviously, we'll see once we get it, but every candidate so far is top tier and top of the class. So I'm going to be excited for any one of them. Maybe my least excited is Adrian Griffin, just because he reminds me so much of Ty Corbin that I start to get sick thinking about it. But that's nothing against him. I hear he's actually a really smart coach, so maybe that would be a good choice as well.
That dark blue jersey that you showed earlier in the podcast reminded me of the Ty Corbin years, and it made me sick because it was some of the worst Jazz years ever. So
I cheered hard still, but it was very hard to cheer.
Yeah, we watched every game, but it was difficult. So but yeah, no, that's awesome.
I don't know if you guys heard the rumors about Brad Stevens being a possible candidate lately.
I had kind of heard rumblings, but I doubt he'll leave that position in Boston.
It's a great position that he's in right now. So it would be. I agree with that. It would be hard to leave such a great organization with such young talent and whatnot. Sooner or later, I'm sure they'll have a championship. So I'm sure he wants to be a part of that. But just the fact that Danny Ainge is here and he has connections through there, I think that's where the Brad Stevens rumors are coming from.
Yeah.
Well, and it might really depend on if he realizes, he doesn't like the executive position or the GM position that he was given. Because I don't know this, and I don't know that many people know what actually happened, but Danny Ainge was ready to move on from the position, and I'm sure they went to him and say, "Hey, you know what we do. We're going to promote you and hire a coach in your stead." And a hypothetical could be that he's just not enjoying that position. He's like, "No, I like coaching and I want to get back into coaching instead." But I agree with you. I don't think it's very likely that he's, willing to come to what do you call it? A small organization, a small market team versus the Celtics when they were just knocking on the door of a championship on a team that he's coached up from when they were babies, So like, I assume he wants to stay with the Celtics and see it through with that team, Tatum and Brown and Smart that he's coached up. So,
well, if we got Brad Stevens, we have the possibility of bringing Gordon Hayward back. So there's always that.
Oh, Lord.
We already got Danny Ainge, and he convinced Gordon once to jump ship and come over, so he can do it again.
We don't have to talk about it, but just think about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think we've talked well. Talk's good. Last topic, we'll just make it a Russian roulette, gun to the head type of thing. And it's not just Russian roulette. There's actually 6 in the chamber. So answer the question. Gun to the head. Who do you build around? Donovan Mitchell or Rudy Gobert? Zach, who do you choose? You have 5 seconds.
I know my opinions. I know my opinion is probably not the most common one. I would pick Rudy Gobert to build around. I think we get a lot more wins with Rudy Gobert. I think he makes the biggest difference. If we kept the team as is, he makes the biggest difference if we lost one or the other. I think to build around Rudy Gobert would be pretty simple, but we would just have to find another scorer to come fill in Donovan Mitchell's spot. But I think the only reason I would stray away from that is because I hear that Gobert can be pretty toxic. So, and maybe not get along with everybody. He's hard to get along with, I should just say. So, that's the only thing that would steer me closer to Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my take.
Derek, the KGB's after you. Gun to your head. Who do you build around?
I guess there's two questions: what's most likely to happen, or what I would do if I was the one. If I had a choice and I had to choose one, and my goal is to win a championship within the next 3 years, I would choose Rudy Gobert. And I think for two reasons. Rudy Gobert, I think if you literally place Rudy Gobert on any team that's in the lottery right now, they make the playoffs this next year, except for maybe like OKC, just because they're just full of draft picks and like nobody else, besides SGH. So, SGA. Anyways, and not only that, we can get much larger return for Donovan Mitchell. If we were to do that trade with Miami for Tyler Hero and a bunch of picks and a bunch of other things, it's intriguing, but I like the Knicks possibility where it be RJ Barrett and Quigley. They're 6'3" young athletic point guard and probably 2 to 3 first round picks. We can let them keep Randall and those guys and whatnot just because,
we don't want Randall.
They still got to stay competitive. But honestly, we know Donovan enough, and I don't want to dog too much on Donovan, but look at all the elite guards in the league, like Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal. It is so hard to build a championship level team around a small offensive minded guard that doesn't play much defense. It's just, really hard. And so if we did get those picks back from the Knicks, I think they'd be pretty decent picks. I don't even know if they're barely making the playoffs in the East unless they lure a big free agent to come play with them in New York. And then with RJ Barrett and Quigley, to add to the current team we have with Bogdanovich and Royce O'Neal, and obviously at that point we trade Conley for another wing, I think you could piece together a team really quick to be a top 5 team in the West and just have a puncher's chance at a championship. And then the opposite, if you trade away Gobert, I think it's a longer process. It's a 2 to 3 year process just to get back into contention. And to me, there's not a clear path. Even if we take that Hawks trade with John Collins and other assets, I think we're scraping to get into the playoffs with that trade. So the upside is the draft picks and what can Danny Ainge do with them, whether that's actually draft them or trade and get more assets around Donovan. But anyways, gun to my head, I'm building in a 3-year time frame. I added that to your scenario.
You've been shot already.
Yeah. I've been shot already. If it's a 3-year time frame rebuild, I'm picking Rudy Gobert.
Okay, Rudy Gobert. I'm gonna go a little twist on both of what both of you guys said, and look at legacy for the Utah Jazz franchise. Who do you go with? And really, Donovan's the more franchise face. He's the more charismatic leader, you could say, and he's like the perfect epitome of what a Utah Jazz All-Star should be, because he's such a good guy. But with Rudy Gobert, you have loyalty. I think if you trade away Donovan, keep Rudy, then Rudy's staying for the rest of his career in Utah. And even if he doesn't win a championship, then you have the memories. Then you have a guy that was loyal, and you have his name up in the rafters, and you have his statue outside. If you keep Donovan, like you said, Derek, it might take us a while to get back into contention, and by that time he might be gone. He might be wanting a trade out or just not signing back with us. And I think that's a very real possibility with Donovan Mitchell. So that's the hard thing. Like Donovan Mitchell's like the perfect leader and just an explosive player that you want on your team. And Rudy Gobert is hard to get along with, like Zach was saying. But if you're looking at like just legacy of the Utah Jazz, Rudy Gobert is going to be loyal. So it's definitely interesting. Gun to my head, I say Rudy Gobert. I would be interested to see what we can do to build a different team around Rudy Gobert. So, all right.
One additional thing with that is that New York Knicks trade. It was just not.
And that
He had something
it's all
so
she wrote.
interesting to say. So interesting to say.
Yeah, he's
just put us on a
the
cliffhanger.
KGB took him out.
No, it's done. He's over. All right.
Well,
I don't see him coming back.
what? That's funny.
He's
But
probably still talking.
yeah. So, like you were just bringing up, even if we did trade away Gobert and kept Mitchell and had another bad year, so I could see Mitchell wanting out.
Yeah.
And not saying a bad year, like even just on, barely making playoffs or being barely out of the playoffs. I could see Donovan Mitchell pushing his way out. If it was the same scenario for Rudy Gobert, I don't think he would be pushing his way out. I think, like you said, he's more loyal and willing to keep going with the franchise that gave him a chance.
Yeah.
And, put all their chips on him at pick 28, right?
27.
27. Yeah. So I think it's a lot easier in my mind, to pick Gobert. And
the sad thing is, the truth is the same with what we did with Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
Other teams weren't seeing Donovan Mitchell as an all-star. They were seeing him as a role player, as a defensive guard, maybe at best.
Mm-hmm.
And we came in with our organization, and right off the bat, we traded up to get him, and then put him right in to the system, and let him loose.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's become, and we've helped to develop him into the player that he is now. And I don't feel like there's a lot of appreciation for that actually from him. I think there's more from Rudy, from what we.
It's kind of along the same lines of Gordon Hayward. The feeling of what's possible in the future of him just deciding to go with another organization, even though we put everything into Gordon Hayward.
Yes.
And like we built around him, and we were getting more assets to build around him. We got Ricky Rubio.
Well, yeah.
That year to pair with him.
And we were about to draft Donovan.
Yes.
So we were about to have Ricky, Donovan with Hayward and Gobert.
Yeah. Which
beautiful. And Favors.
And we still had Favors. We still had a great team. And it could have been good. And maybe Mitchell would have bloomed a little later.
True.
Not getting all the playing time that he probably would have. But he still would have been a star for sure. Can't deny that talent.
And I got to admit, because of Hayward leaving, my favorite team of all time, because I was born in 97 before Stockton Malone, my favorite team was last year's team. Not this last season, but 2020's season, where the Jazz were number 1 in the league.
Mm-hmm.
That was my favorite Jazz team. It was so fun to watch. It was almost Golden State-esque, the way they were playing that year. Yeah. And that maybe never would have happened without Hayward leaving. So
yeah,
we're all good there.
The ball moved so fluidly. It just, they passed the ball and played as a great team that whole year. And that's something I think we were missing this last year. You could tell they did not play as a team. There was so much ISO ball when it wasn't necessary, and
Yeah.
um,
That's why we need a new voice from the
yeah,
coach. I think the coach couldn't control it, lost control of the locker room. So make some trades, get a new coach. Maybe that will humble them. Losing Quinn Snyder from their locker room, it will humble them. But
mhm.
anyways, I think this has been good. I think this has been a good discussion. Tomorrow is the NFL, the NFL draft. Just kidding, the NBA draft. And that will be exciting to see if there's some big changes coming to Utah. So
Yeah, hopefully we can get into this draft. I think we need younger talent, and we probably need to check up on Derek, see if the KGB didn't get to him already.
drive over to his house now. I'll start calling. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, anyone who happened to watch and listen in. Uh, leave us a like and subscribe, and share it with any friends so that we can start building a community. Yeah, thank you for watching Built by Sports, and we'll see you guys very soon. Thank you.